It's always a good time. Oh, okay, well, a bit of a fumble at the beginning. It was always a good time. It's always a good time when I get to catch up with folks I actually have known before this podcast, and I get to. I've already developed my own opinions, maybe about their music or how they might perceive it, and then I end up learning that no, in fact, it is not how they perceive it, or I was in the ballpark. It was a fun conversation. If you want to see the video version of it, it's on Patreon. Willem has we discussed the background a little bit because it's got that beautiful. Nobody needed to hear the end of that.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
That's great. It's great. I'm glad that I know a decent amount of music, some more than some of the other guests that I've had initially. So that's always cool to anticipate even more what the worst song is going to be that you end up choosing.
Okay, yeah.
But for now, maybe we can just set the context for the listeners of maybe where you're based, the kind of music you play, that kind of thing.
Yeah. My name's Willem James Cowan. I'm based in around Ontario. I'm living in London right now. Yeah, I make like singer-songwriter-y stuff, folk rock adjacent. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's about right. That's like, yeah, anywhere from like, yeah, indie folk rock to indie folk, and
Yeah.
all of those exchanges in between. You sort of touch on all of them.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, and something that I guess I wanted to jump into, you had but it's because it's something that I talk about a lot and think about a lot, is you had the song conTENT,
Right.
which is very, I guess, topical, basically, to musicians, right?
Yeah.
It's something we're always thinking about, unfortunately. It's like the dirty word version of what we make.
Music. Yeah. Well, that was
Yeah.
the bit when I was releasing that, because the song is conTENT, which
Hmm.
is like
It's a play on.
Yeah, but as I was posting it, I was realizing how many people were misinterpreting it, so I had to like do a bit of explaining there.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Can I ask quickly, what's on the TV behind you? It looks like a majestic.
Oh yeah, that's just the screensaver that Fire Stick plays, I think.
Okay, Fire Stick, whoever their photographer is.
And never mind, the remote's far away. I'm not going to turn it
Okay.
off. So you can just get used to it, I guess. I think
Okay,
it
fair
switches
enough.
back and forth.
Yeah, okay, that's true. Well, I'll be entertained throughout this.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. I'm a little curious who you would say your influences are. Like, I have my own ideas,
Hmm.
but I'm curious what to you think their perception is. So that's what I've learned from doing this podcast, is people's perception doesn't always link up to, or perception of themselves doesn't always link up to the audience's perception of them. So I'm
Right. Yeah.
super curious.
Yeah. I mean, like it constantly changes. I'm somebody who is constantly trying to find new music and listen to what's coming out and stuff. So I do feel like I'm inspired by new things a lot. I grew up listening to the Ramones and like pop punk and stuff. That was my kind of like coming of age. Like when I figured out that I wanted to be a musician, that was the kind of thing I was listening to, and that um, kind of pushed me, I think, in like a songwriting direction. I was the singer of a band that started when we were in like grade 5, I think. And
Wow.
yeah, and that as well. Like I was never an instrumentalist, so that pushed me. I had to write all the lyrics and the melody and stuff. So I
Mm.
think doing that and coming from like listening to a lot of like punk based stuff when I was a kid kind of led me in like a songwriting direction. Nowadays, I mean, like super inspired by just like contemporary singer-songwriters. Dan Mangan was huge for me in high school. Um, Elliott Smith, Andy Schaaf. Um, but yeah, like I don't know, it's a lot of stuff. Like the early six, like Joni Mitchell and
Yeah, the
James
Bible of
Taylor.
what we'd expect for the genre.
Yeah, yeah, like early folk songwriters. And yeah, also like a lot of the stuff I was listening to in high school was like that, um, like mid 2000s indie rock
For
craze.
sure. For sure.
So I
You
feel like
mean
I have a
even
lot of
people
that.
in like our own backyard, like you mean Broken Social Scene and Feist and people
For
like
sure.
that? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. And like Born Ruffians
Hmm.
and the Elwins and stuff, like two other Toronto bands.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of that stuff.
That's really I noted something. I feel like a lot of people would say, "Oh, I heard the Beatles and it made me think about the songwriting," or I
Mhm.
heard old R&B and it made me think about the why the horns are hitting where they are and think about
Right.
songwriting.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so interesting that punk is the thing that sets you off in a songwriting way. And that is not a diss to punk. It's just
Yeah.
punk is a different thing to me. It's
Mhm.
energy and a lot of the time direct and
Yeah, and I also like
yeah,
I'm definitely not gonna say I'm a big punk fan. I mean, my favorite band when I was a kid is the Ramones, and they are like, labeled as the forefathers of punk, but also barely punk
barely I
in
would
the grand scheme of things.
this far in the rearview mirror with everything that's come forward, that's
Yeah.
really doesn't read as punk to anybody who if you showed a kid it, they would not think it was punk.
No, it's super. I mean, yeah, I was into it when I was a kid. It's very
Yeah, yeah, right, right.
kid friendly, most
Yeah,
of
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff is like it's all about the song. It is about yeah, the energy and the attitude and stuff as well, and also like the political stance and like
That
the
for
space
sure.
that it was written in and why that scene kind of emerged.
For sure.
Um,
Lyrically, I could see it leading to your interest in songwriting. Yeah,
yeah,
I guess
yeah,
musically is what I was thinking of.
yeah. I
Yes.
mean, I did get really into the Beatles, but I didn't get really into the Beatles until like high school.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Really? So what did your parents play around the house? Because I feel like for a lot of people, they almost don't even remember listening to the Beatles for the first time.
Yeah, my dad. So my mom and my dad grew up in were like big music fans in the 80s during like the new wave. They were like big new wave dance
Cool.
club people.
Yeah.
And then my mom was really into like REM and um, like Jan Arden and Crash Test Dummies and stuff. And then my dad, I didn't listen to anything my dad listened to because he was into like industrial, like heavy stuff.
He
That
was like sitting in his room when he's supposed to be bouncing you on his knee and he's listening to Trent Reznor. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, weird shit I've never even heard of still to this day. And I
Wow.
still, you know what? Can't get into it. I think he's softened a little bit in old age and gone back to some of like the 80s hits and stuff, but
Okay, okay.
some of that stuff is yeah, still too much for me.
It's pretty esoteric and it's like
Yeah.
abstract music to
Yeah,
me, kind of,
definitely.
in
Yeah.
some ways. Wow. Well, you had, yeah, I definitely didn't expect some of these references to show up in your background necessarily. Uh,
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
to me, you really like you are good at and very much like step with your foot forward in with indie folk rock. You know, that's
Mhm.
with all, capital IF and R. It's
Mhm.
all equally spaced out. But the songwriting is so notable by you. I feel like it's more like when you listen to Paul Simon or something, you're like, this dude has thought about the writing of this song.
Yeah, yeah, that's like oh, and you know what? That I mean, I have so many influences. I always forget to
Sure,
mention
sure, of
people.
course.
The James Mercer from the Shins is one of my biggest
Oh yeah, I can
songwriting
hear that too.
influences. Just the way that he crafts a melody is super interesting, and I try to. Um, I was listening to this interview with him a few years ago where he was talking about. I don't remember what the word he used was, but it was something like the um, kind of like the dynamic between the like harmony and a melody that kind of he wants it to sound like this is going to be super paraphrasy and may not even have been what he meant, but the way that I took it was he wants it to sound like kind of a battle between the two where um it's not what you think. You know, that when you hear the
Hmm.
chords, the melody is not the first melody that pops into your head, and that's something I really notice a lot with his stuff. Is that those melodies are so like soaring and constantly moving,
It's a
and
great point.
just super interesting. Like the Shins were obviously a huge like indie rock band, quote unquote, of that time. But they do not get referenced, and he does not get referenced in songwriting in this kind
You're
of like space. I don't
making a
think
really
nearly
good
enough.
point.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
well, let's say I haven't listened too much to their more recent stuff, but
mhm.
the one everybody knows, what the hell is that one called?
Oh, Inverted World, the blue one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that and the one that preceded it.
shoots too narrow.
Okay, Shoots Too Narrow. If it had been a record, I would have worn it out.
Okay.
The songwriting on that
Yeah.
is insane. Even the first song where it's just so fantastic. Yeah, you're totally right. James Mercer does not get the respect
Yeah.
that he
Yeah.
deserves.
It's strange because there is a lot of songwriters well, a lot of like people are in that world, I think, who kind of came around at that time who
Hmm.
do get a lot of credit for the writing. Because it, a lot of those bands, that's not the thing you focus on, even though that is kind of the crux of what that type of music was. But
That's a
um,
good point.
yeah, for whatever reason. I
Huh.
don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I also thought Broken Bells, their first album, was amazing.
Yeah, really cool. I mean, also Danger Mouse, incredible producer.
Yeah, yeah, right.
So
So,
their stuff it's not like quite it's not like in my wheelhouse quite as much, but
mhm.
I think the stuff that they did is really cool. And his James Mercer's band before the Shins was called Flake, and they only have one record, but it's similar. It's uh, like Built to Spill, like early late '90s alt rock kind of thing, but still good songwriting.
Well, I'm curious how this can relate to the first question, which is the worst performance or gig story.
Hmm.
Uh, I think that because your songs are really catchy as well as being intricately written, in my opinion, and some of them anyway. Some of them intricately, they're all good. Uh, um, but sometimes I find that can actually maybe turn off the most passive fans at a show or something like that if it's just like a
Sure.
little bit too much for them to initially hook into. So I'm
Yeah.
so curious if that has ever played a role. Like you do have really catchy songs that are simple as well, but I just don't think that I think that most of your what I've heard from you is it's what you just said. You don't want the first melody to be the one that anybody could think of. You want it to be interesting and then sort of
Mhm.
catchy new melodic avenue. And yeah, for that reason, it's good to active listeners and maybe
Right. Yeah.
slightly tougher to passive listeners.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't know that that's something that I would have ever been able to like pick out as a reason why people maybe tune out or something.
I'm
That
making it
definitely
up as I go
happens.
along.
Yeah, I mean that happens. I think that happens to everybody. Um my songs are super wordy, and also they can be like a little bit self-referential sometimes, where like I'm kind of making callbacks to other things in the song. I care a lot about the words.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of the time, if you're playing in like a noisy bar with a $200 PA, that stuff doesn't come through. So I think when I am losing people, that is maybe the reason. And also, a lot of people don't care about the words, and that's very fair.
That's very true.
At least I would like to hope that that's the reason, and it's not because I sound bad or something.
I think I find that I unlikely. If I think it's definitely because it's like, oh, it's wordy, but it's not rap.
Mm,
Okay,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, or something like that. But
yeah.
I love that. I love all of the things that I'm describing may be harder for a passive listener. I'm like, those are what make your songwriting great.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
thank you. That's
That's
yeah.
what I like. So yeah, let's hear like any worse gigs stand out to you?
Yeah, a couple come to mind. I don't know if any of them would be from my own stuff. Like I said, I was in that band when we started playing when we were like 11 or 12 or something.
Yeah, right.
Um, and I mean, there was one gig where we opened up for somebody, and they we did like a I just sang, and we had like a instrumental intro thing that we did for during some of the shows, and I would like come out at the end of it and start the first song.
Hmm.
And I walked out, and I had this like I had a button-up shirt like tucked in, and it was like puffing out at the edges, and the side of my shirt caught um like it was like a guitar, you know, those like we called them trees when I used to work at a music store.
Yeah, I
They
know what
had
you're
like
talking about.
three guitar stands kind of in a triangle hanging on them.
Yeah.
um the uh the stand was set up so that only one guitar was in it, so it was like already kind of off balance, and it was this like $2,000 PRS, and like my shirt hooked to the back of the stand and it fell over. And
Oh
so
my.
the first chord of the first song after that intro happened was just like this guitar falling over on the stage for this guy that we were opening for. And I didn't even really notice it at first, and somebody in the band had to like pick it up as the song was starting, and
Oh,
it soured the rest of the set a little
I
bit.
believe you.
Yeah.
And so you said that you were in that band from like 11 to 15. So what were you, like 13?
Yeah, I want to say that was like grade 8 or 9 or something. So yeah, like 14, 13 maybe.
I can't think of a worst year of your life to be embarrassed.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was around I mean, I'm clumsy in general, but that was around the time where you're just like that's the age where you're like the
Oh
clumsiest. You're like
yeah.
still learning to be the height you are
Yeah, you don't even you're
for the
growing into your
width.
body.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah, that was rough. And I mean, we played a lot of weird gigs. Um, but we played this gig. Oh man. Okay, wait. We played this. It was a birthday party. I love telling the story actually because it's so
Okay.
absurd. We we played a birthday party. It was like someone's sweet 16 birthday party, and their family must have had money or whatever because her dad rented out like a field in like just outside of London in the country, um, to like host this big like essentially like a little mini festival for her birthday, and they hired us and this other band, who was pretty big in London at the time,
Hmm.
to Crown King, who I think is actually getting back together. They're really good. Um, and we got there like probably an hour before it was supposed to start or whatever to sound check, and there was nobody there yet. And I remember the dad being like, "Oh, like yeah, I'm sorry, there's no one here, but you know, give it a sec. People are going to show up." They were like sending a bus out to like a neighboring town to like pick a bunch of people up and bring them back.
Hmm.
Um,
Damn.
and there was like food trucks and stuff.
Who
Um,
was this? Like the daughter of the mayor of London at the
this is
time
what
or
I'm saying. I
something?
don't remember, but clearly they, they had
They had
enough
some
to,
money.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could have had a little festival for my sweet 16, right on.
Exactly.
But yeah, okay, so I mean, pretty much the end of the story is that we played to like 10 people in this giant field, which is so incredibly sad to think about. Like, you set up this whole like field party for your birthday, and like your closest friends come. And you know what? If it was like a small bar, it probably would have felt packed or whatever,
Yes.
right? But because it
Yeah.
was this giant field, it felt so lackluster. And the bus went to pick people up from that neighboring town and came back with nobody.
Oh,
Nobody was waiting for it. So yeah, there was probably like yeah, 10 between 10 and 20 people, which is a reasonable amount for a 16-year-old's birthday party. But
yes.
the field made it feel a little bit depressing, and we thought it was really funny to play the theme song for the cartoon 16.
I don't know if I know
Um,
that.
oh, really? Yeah, that was like early 2000s
Oh, wait, is
intelligent
they're all
cartoon.
it's a yeah, I think I actually do know do they all hang out in the mall?
Yes.
Yeah, they all
Yeah.
have jobs, and one guy's basically like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, but
Yeah.
without a dog. Yeah,
Yeah, the skateboarder character.
yeah,
Great show, great theme
absolutely.
song. But they didn't get it. They didn't find it that funny. So that was a bit of a bummer too.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty tough, especially, yeah, both of those ages are they can define certain parts of your life. So the fact that you
Yeah.
still went into music is good, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was never a question. It was like it was all I knew how to do. So trying my
Well,
best.
I only had one or two other people say that they were in a band and writing when they were that young.
Mhm.
Uh, what do you write about when you're that young?
Um, for me, it was just
I don't
like
mean 16, because then you can begin to get into some real shit.
sure,
I
yeah,
mean like
yeah.
11 or 12.
For me, it was just like what everybody else was writing about. Like I remember, we had this song. I don't think we like actually did anything with it, but it was just like one of the songs that we were writing at the time that was about like probably some girl who broke my heart, which never actually happened. And I remember somebody coming over and listening and being like, "You don't have to write about what everyone else is writing about. Like you can, talk about your own thing." And for whatever reason, I still remember that. And I remember at the time being like kind of embarrassed about it because I didn't really have anything to write about. I was just like was listening to like Zeppelin and the Who and stuff, and was just writing about whatever rock and roll singers were writing
Yeah,
about.
yeah. Which is
But
usually just like incredibly awful sex,
yeah, sure.
mostly.
Yeah. Yeah, so hadn't had a lot of those experiences yet. But yeah, I mean that did stick with me, and
Pacific Crest, I forgot about this one. This is a muscle relaxant for that band member who thinks they're carrying the rest of you. Carrying the rest of you. Suffering from aches and pains because you're carrying the rest of them. I gotta play both sides. Then this is for you. Pacifica, Pacifica.
singers were writing
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Um,
Which is
but
usually just like incredibly awful sex,
yeah, sure.
mostly.
Yeah. Yeah, so hadn't had a lot of those experiences yet. But yeah, I mean that did stick with me, and maybe has changed my songwriting perspective a little bit, at least passively.
Yeah, I feel like it might have,
Yeah.
or at least certainly, even if we can't say that's definitely why, that's a contender. There's a
Yeah.
little bit of circumstantial evidence
I
for what
definitely write love related songs much less now, so that's saying something.
that is saying something.
Yeah.
Well, what about a really good gig? Did you have any? I guess it's fine if you have one from your when you became an adult and afterwards. That's more what people have answered. Like, but I am very curious if you had a best gig at that age.
Yeah, we played some cool like we played like the like city run like New Year's Eve thing that was like live streamed to the local TV channel and stuff. Those were a lot of fun.
Damn.
Um
I feel like that's better than some adult bands do
oh
sometimes.
man, that's like better than what I've played as myself now.
Yeah,
Um
exactly.
yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of cool little things we did. It's hard to remember because it was so long ago, and we played a lot of like just weird one-offs. Um But yeah, I mean, like as an adult for this project, I feel like it's constantly changing. Honestly,
Hmm.
the best shows are not always the ones that you think are going to be the best. It's like the ones where people listen. I love playing with a band, because I think a lot of my songs kind of call for the extra instrumentation stuff. But a lot of my favorite shows that I've played have been playing solo, because it feels like people listened a little bit more. Um, One of my favorite shows was I opened for. Do you know Taylor Simpson?
I know the name. Yeah.
Okay, he's like a Toronto
Okay.
songwriter. He and I released a record on the same day in November of 2022. And he had a record release party, and I didn't. But
No
I
party in a field or anything. You could hire that
no,
girl's dad.
dude, yeah, should have.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't think I would because he clearly wasn't a very good planner.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
but yeah, I remember that gig. I don't know. I didn't really think much of it at the time, like before I was playing it, because it was like his release party, and
Hmm.
I don't think most of the people probably knew who I was, but it was like a group of people who just like really listened. I played solo and I sat, which I try to do when I play solo usually.
Hmm.
But yeah, people just really listened, and I got a really good response out of it. And that was more rewarding than last week. I played the London Canada Day show at like the big park
Right.
in the middle of downtown, and there's something to that as well. But
That's cool.
people, it's really rewarding when people listen and come up and talk to you about specific things or whatever at the end of the set.
Yeah, and I feel like
Yeah.
almost like you're pointing at something that I had to discover the hard way too, which is people people will like chill or be a little more like dancey or whatever into your music if you have a band behind you.
Mhm.
But people will actually pay attention as though it's a performance or a intimate thing if it's just you and guitar, if they're a good audience.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's interesting what you evoke from the audience depending on what you're giving.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it's
Even
like
just the body language of you choosing to sit when you're playing solo or stand, mostly stand when you're,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah. I wonder if that has something to do with it because it does like kind of force people to assume that they need to be really quiet when somebody is sitting. Maybe there's
Exactly.
something to that. And especially because my music is so wordy and stuff, and like when you have the full band behind you, it's harder to kind of get that stuff out. And yeah, I mean, it becomes a different show. It becomes about a slightly different thing,
Hmm.
which really works in some cases and really doesn't in others.
Absolutely. And also it's like, at least speaking for myself, one day I'll wake up and enjoy some of the positives or negatives that you're talking about, and other days I'll be like, fuck, I hate this for almost the same reasons.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's crazy how much just like you're sort of going along, and and a venue or a show can just push you in one direction slightly or another direction slightly.
Yeah, can shift your opinion. Yeah,
Yes,
you can play a sit down solo show one week and it can go really well, and you can love everything about that, and then the next week you play the same thing and like nobody listens, and you're like, fuck, what's that? I don't want to do this anymore. Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, it sounds like you are certainly like a favorite in London. I mean, how do you get that? You must be doing have a name for yourself out there. So I'm curious what the London scene is like.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's true, but I like London. It's like I moved to Toronto in 2020. No, sorry, 2019.
Hmm.
And I was very deep in like the college scene before that because I was just finishing school for music, or like college for music. It was like a music production course. And there's a really tight knit group that you get from that. Um, so I kind of had like, I was obviously playing in London a lot when I was younger, but I feel like I hadn't really experienced the music scene here as an adult because most of my adult time was spent being really focused in this one scene, in college. And so I moved to Toronto, and when I moved back, London had gotten this UNESCO designation for it. It's like the first city in Canada, if not North America. I'm not 100% sure.
Wow.
No, it can't be North America. It must just be Canada.
No offense to London, but why?
I don't know. I can't speak on that. London's got a lot of cool stuff going on, and especially
Absolutely, I'm
since
sure.
then, it is. Yeah, there are. It can be a little bit surprising sometimes. But yeah, like the first UNESCO designated music city in Canada. They must have
Music City.
they must have had
Okay.
a good pitch at the meeting or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
but I think since then there has kind of been a newfound like movement.
Enthusiasm. Huh.
Yeah, yeah, enthusiasm, and like I think yeah, just people are a little bit more excited about it
Huh.
than they were. But it's also hard to tell because I was younger before I left, and slightly less involved. So it's hard to say for sure. But um, yeah, there's cool stuff coming out of here, and I'm happy to be back and get involved in that kind of. And I've got a good group of friends and fellow musicians that I get to write around and play with and stuff. So it's been nice the past little while.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good. Are there any venues that you specifically really like playing or going to
Um,
in London?
yeah, I mean, a lot of them have unfortunately closed.
Hmm.
Closed over the pandemic. Like the historic Call the Office closed in like 2021 or two.
Hmm.
Um, there have been a couple that have opened since I've gotten back. A lot of the venues that I like playing here are like not traditional like bar like show like venue
Right.
bars kind
They're
of thing.
converted from something else or something like that.
Yeah, or just like don't only put on shows. They're like art spaces or whatever.
Yes,
So,
yes, right.
there's a bar downtown that I do like a cover night at called the Poacher's Arms, which I quite like just for like my own patronizing. But yeah, they also put on good shows. Holy Diver, which
Right.
is a relatively new establishment, is putting on cool things. Um, Shoosh Artists, which is like an art space and photography studio that my one of my good friends is affiliated with, has put on some cool stuff, and I feel like there's more. Um, there's things popping up and like kind of like arts organizations popping up and putting on things at places that aren't necessarily venues that are more interesting than what the quote unquote big venues are doing in the city.
Right. Well, what else is new? You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah,
Tale
exactly.
as old as time, but that probably means that you're right, that there's some sort of growing little boom in these other little areas rather than everybody just only focusing on the main venues as they are and that kind of thing. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
totally. Yeah. And I think and I hope that will only continue.
Is it a lot of other singer-songwriters around you, or like is that the
Um,
company you keep, or is it a lot of wide variety?
yeah, I feel like that is a lot of the people that I play with. There's some good like heavier stuff coming out of London.
Hmm.
Like before I left, there was a really big punk scene here, which I wasn't particularly involved with, but there was a lot of that stuff and like a folk punk scene that was pretty big for a while. So I'm not particularly knowledgeable about that anymore, but I have heard that there's some really good like heavier stuff going on.
Hmm.
And yeah, but yeah, a lot of the people that I play with and write with and stuff are more into the singer songwriter like folk
Yeah,
veins, I
that
guess.
general ballpark. It doesn't need to be exactly
Yeah,
everything the same. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, speaking of singer-songwriter, I'm curious what you think your best song you've released is.
Oh yeah, that's tough because I feel like my favorite song that I'm doing is always the one that I'm working on at the moment.
Which is good.
Um, yeah, and classic. That's like every songwriter's response.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm releasing three, I think, singles this year, hopefully towards the end of the summer, beginning of the fall. And those are the ones that I'm most proud of right now. But as for stuff I've released, um, I mean, hmm, I will say Only Dreaming Now, particularly because I think that's the one that gets the most response at shows and stuff.
So what does
Um,
response mean to you? Literally vocally applause kind of thing? People.
yeah, I think people like that one is it's catchy. I
Hmm.
think
Yep.
it catches people's ear the most.
Yep.
I sing a couple high notes in that song, so I get
It's a
some
bit
like
attention grabbing.
some woos.
Yes.
And I've had people come up to me after and say that was the one that kind of caught their ears. So um, probably that one because I think that one has got the most like outward praise, I
Hmm.
guess. But the one that one of the ones that I'm most proud of is "Lost My Mind," which I put out in
Hmm.
2020. It was just like a single. Um, that sounds kind of long, and I just like the way it turned out. I'm proud of the lyrics. Um, and it was also written after most of the songs that came out on the record a couple years later.
Really?
Yeah, so those just like it's newer. It still feels fresher to me than some of the stuff that came out most recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, wow. Okay. I love that you took this in two different directions. One is like based on what other people are saying to me, and then one is external and one is internal,
Hmm.
which I like. Uh, and I do think it is actually a good method. It's like be true to yourself when you're writing your songs, but then when you play your songs, gauging audience's reaction to tell you which, at the very least, might be most catchy or the
Yeah.
best idea for a single, I think is a good formula.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because then at least you know they're only choosing what they like about music you're proud of rather than pandering to them in some way.
Right. Yeah. True. Yeah.
That's all I mean.
I was just watching um, a an interview with David Bazan from Page of the Lion, who's one of my incredible songwriter, and with Jim Adkins from Jimmy Eat World. I just had
Mm,
it on today, and they were talking about like how you perceive a song and how the audience perceives it can be totally different. Where like you're writing something and imagining that it's going to be the single for the record or whatever, and then if you don't get any response, it's like that's you can still enjoy that song and you still can be really proud of that song, but the one that you want to put out as the single or that you push to the audience doesn't need to be the one that you like the most necessarily, as long as you're not putting out stuff that you hate or
exactly.
like
I
aren't
agree.
proud of.
Yeah, as long
um,
as you're choosing from the collection of songs you
yeah.
wanted to release, then it shouldn't be an issue.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's you can gear your record or your promo a little bit for the people who are listening.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I think there is like a give and take as much as sometimes wish it was a utopia where everything was just a dictator style with the musician.
Yeah.
It isn't and maybe shouldn't be because yes, you can write a song to yourself and never show it to anyone, and you could pass away, and that song still exists.
Hmm.
But it's not quite what you and I are doing. There's a reason we're doing it publicly, not just in our rooms,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. I need people to tell me I'm good.
Which is why I brought you here, man, to
Yeah.
talk about your worst shit.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, it's time to talk about what you think your worst song is.
Yeah. I thought about this a little bit. I don't. So it's on my second EP. The first song on that EP is like kind of intro-y. It's a little short, and I do think that I would choose that one, but it feels cheap because it's not really a song.
Uh,
Um, and so
it's
I
like choosing an interlude on an album or something.
yeah, it's like two verses, and that's
Yes, right, right.
so.
I see.
Um, I think the first EP I put out has some less strong stuff on it. Um, I think the song "Not What You Think It Is probably the one that I cringe the most when I hear some of the words and stuff now. I like the chord changes in that song. Like the B section, I'm still pretty proud of the way that flows, but the there's like filler words in there that I just never changed. Um,
Totally.
and I hate that. I wish I could go back and just fix some of that. Um,
And it's something also you only know, but it's still sort of a thorn in your side.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? Nobody's listening to that going, that's fucking filler,
yeah.
right?
But
They
I
just think
mean,
you
maybe.
no, well they might think filler in the way that it's like hack, but they don't mean filler in the way that you knew
Right.
literally they were there to fill the space and then you
Yeah,
would
yeah,
change them.
yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
So yeah, probably that song. I'm on the fence about taking that EP off of streaming services and stuff, just because it really doesn't. It's very like rock oriented, like psychedelic rock.
Right. It
It's
doesn't
kind of
totally.
adjacent.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. I was just
yeah,
having this conversation with somebody else in an interview that'll come out later, but yeah, the keeping an eye on your entire discography and the sense of it and experimenting is still something that people should do. I like hearing artists experiment, whatever, but I
mhm.
definitely do understand like wanting to keep it within the, let's say, fast boundaries of something so that it feels like a collection in a way.
Yeah, and especially at this point in my career, like I want people to hear something and like kind of get a gist of what they're getting
Yes.
into. Some of my favorite artists are constantly changing what they do. You know, like Sufjan Stevens
Yeah.
does that super well. Kevin Barnes from Montreal, they do that really well. But at this point in my career, I would like to be a little bit more focused. You know, the whole personal brand
Yes.
conversation. And also, I'm just like not super proud of some of those songs anymore. So
Fair
they
enough.
don't
I love.
represent me any well. It's not. Some of them are not that great. But it's on the internet for now, so I can say it in this podcast.
So everybody
that song.
listening to this, go check if it's still there. If it is still there, illegally download it. So when he takes it off, you will have it.
Yeah, it's on
Yeah.
Bandcamp, and you can still download it. So
Hey, there you go. There you
yeah,
go.
before I take it off there.
Uh, do you really think you're going to take it off?
Um,
Or is it just something that you like, keeps you up at night and then you go to sleep?
I think I probably would take it off streaming services.
Okay.
Yeah, I might leave it up on Bandcamp.
Right, right. But the majors.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm considering it.
So you got the 3 singles coming later this year.
Mm-hmm.
Are they preceding an album at all? Or for now, you're just like, I worked on a batch of songs. I really like these songs. I'm going to release them.
For now, they're separate.
Yeah.
I do want to start working on another album at the end of the year, like maybe early next year, and seeing what comes of that. And you know that like I've tried to get away from being so romantic with releases and stuff. So I'm you know if
I know
it
exactly
feels
what you
like-
mean.
Yeah, if it feels like those songs deserve to be put on the record after they're released, then maybe they will be. But for now, I think they're just standalone singles.
Cool. Are they doing what you're saying, which is maybe they're serving as good representations of where you are right now musically and what you're interested in
I think so.
in a
Yeah.
way that still fits into your larger
Yeah,
discography? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, they're kind of a halfway point between where I want what I want to do with the next album and where I have been the past couple years, which I think will be like a good transition period kind of thing. And
Well, can you elaborate more on like sound wise what you mean?
yeah, I mean, I want to make it when we recorded the last record, we did it very much as like a band.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those songs had been like practiced at live shows and stuff with the band for years. And a lot of them kind of called for that anyway. So it made sense the way that we did it. We did like, you know, bed tracks and then re-recorded guitars and just the way, you know, a band would make an album. But the album kind of came out sounding like a band album, which I still like that album. But I want to make things a little bit more in the box by myself so that it sounds a little bit more singer-songwriter. I want to use less like electric guitars and live drums and stuff. And I'm really interested in the like parallel opposites between like really acoustic instruments and really electronic instruments and do a little bit of that. I really like when artists can combine those things really well without doing a lot of the stuff that's in the middle.
Me too. I love that too.
Yeah.
So instead of bringing two spectrums together, it's like you're going from the two ends and meeting right.
Yeah.
I'm not high, I swear.
But yeah, I love that. Like David Bazan from Page of the Lion does that really well. I'm sure there are other artists. I can put Claro does that really well.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I want to play with that a little bit for the record, and I'm kind of doing that a little bit for the next few songs. One of them in particular sounds very much like a band, and one of them sounds a little bit more like what I want the next album to sound like. So there's a little bit of variation there, but I think they're like they make sense in the chronology of my releases. Yeah.
Cool. Honestly, I'm really excited to hear those and see where you're moving towards.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
Thank you for coming on. I'd love for you to reintroduce who you are and the song, your worst song name, and that'll lead us out.
For sure. Yeah. My name is Willem James Cowan, and my worst song is Not What You Think It Is off of the Friends of the Cove EP.
I love the way that the title works with this. It's My Worst Song Is Not What You Think It Is.
Hey, there you go.
Walked along through the tall grass, curtains of trees were scared. Hurry up to make the dark pass, make what I see in my head. I took a picture at sunset, it didn't look quite the same. I wish my eye wasn't Kodak. I'd take the picture again. Give me a reason, can't justify how I feel at night. It's of unease and discomfort, see from my open eyes, till I see the light. Play back my voice on a tape deck. Don't sound like myself at all. My front could break like a bird's nest after